Thank you so much for joining us for this session. My name is Christian Sakino. I am the Chief of Staff and Technology Lead here at Island Innovation. I am originally from Margarita Island in the Caribbean, where I recently was located, but I'm currently living at the beautiful coastal city of Vigo in the northwest part of Spain. I am very happy to be moderating this session, which is titled Future-Proofing Economies by Building Resilient Water and Agri-Food Systems. Now, before we begin, you should see a poll appear on your screen right about now. And this poll is to get to know you better, right? We want to know where you are connecting from. So please select your region. In the options, we have all of the regions represented. And also, if you scroll a little bit down, you will see options to choose your sector, the sector that you belong to, and your industry. Okay, so please take a few moments to answer that poll. Now, rising water and food scarcity across the world is highlighting the fragility of global systems. On islands, this scarcity is often exacerbated by imported goods and developing industries, increasingly affected by climate change. So we ask ourselves, what can be done to build resilience in these key sectors? In this session, you will find out how island communities can future-proof their socio-economic future and improve their food and water security through sustainable development. What are the challenges that islands are facing in this current scene? First, of course, climate change, which is impacting every part of the world, but especially islands. One of the other challenges is urbanization, environmental degradation. So how do we build resilience from this? You will hear from our experts in the panel. But we're going to cover various topics like water management, diversified agriculture, technology and innovation, policy and governance, which is very important to get everyone in the same page, education and awareness, research and development, and global collaboration. All right, so I am seeing a lot of participation in the chat. Thank you. And also in the poll, let's see the results. So we have a vast contingency from Europe. We have the advantage of the time zone. So thank you everyone from Europe who is joining us for this session. But we also have a lot of people from Asia. Thank you so much. We have a large Asian audience in our newsletter and social media. So we thank you for joining us. And we also have people from North America and of course our beautiful Pacific region. You know, I am island biased, so I'm always going to highlight the island regions, and the Pacific has a lot of islands. It's very important for us, large audience as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And the sector that you belong to, we have a large majority of you, 43% come from the private sector, but we have the academia with 21%, NGOs with 14%, the government with 7%, and 14% that belong to other sectors. As far as the industry goes, we have the majority of you come from the agriculture, forestry, and fisheries sector. Of course, it goes well with the topic of the panel, but we also have people in the environmental services and oceans conservation sector, management consulting, communications, waste, circular economy, and we have an amazing session about circular economy coming up tomorrow in the Virtual Island Summit, so don't miss that. And we have, of course, tourism. Don't miss our tourism session on Friday, please. It's going to be very interesting. And thank you so much for your responses. I would like to remind you that we have the Q&A box on the lower left, right? So in the Q&A box is where you will add your questions to our esteemed panelists. We will do our best to make sure that we can address as many as possible in the Q&A section that starts right after the presentations. Okay, and as always, please continue to use the chat to let us know what you think about the session. And also you will find a lot of important information on the chat. Okay, so please keep an eye on it. Now, without further ado, I am going to hand over to our first panelist for today, Mr. Ulf Stenerhag, who is the founder of Way Out Water.
Let me see. Thank you so much, Christian, and thank you, Island Innovation, for allowing us to be here. It's a pleasure, and I will try to share my screen now and hope that you all can see my presentation mode. So thank you again, Christian, and thank you for Island Innovation to let us be here. I think that obviously the island nation is most likely suffering among the most from climate change, and in many cases not have been involved in creating the problems. But I still think that there is an opportunity for island nations to become a leading example. I mean, if you can solve things in the context of an island nation, it's most likely enable us to spread it in a larger context. So you can see the island nation as a small presentation of a world or our planet. So I'm coming from Way Out. I'm one of the founders and CEO of Way Out. I think that we have, and I will speak mainly about drinking water, and obviously the drinking water sector will also affect other type of water sectors. I think we are all aware about the major challenges we see in the water sector, and more specifically from a packaging plastic, single-use plastic point of view. 1.5 billion plastic bottles are produced every day. Only 9% is recycled. You have seen it all on your beautiful beaches. You have seen it all over in nature and in your communities. And this is most likely the most common way of distributing water today. It takes a lot of energy. It creates microplastic. It's leaching a lot of chemicals, PFAS, and microplastic, obviously. We were some months ago on Maldives and learned that if you get a mosquito bite, you're actually introduced microplastic in your blood. On top of that, or inside of that, there is a lot of people that is actually also don't have access to clean drinking water. They have to take their water from unsafe areas, or imagine that you have to boil your water, and will lead to a part of deforestation. So obviously these two major challenges, the waste of single plastic and the access, is two things that I think that we can do something about. Some good things, there is a lot of movement in the area of trying to ban single-use plastic or plastic. Obviously, there is the 2030 agenda, there is the 2050 race to zero, and we see more and more countries leading that movement towards a single-use plastic-free society. We have been engaged with some talks with politicians, especially in the Indian Ocean, and many of them saying that we would definitely ban single-use plastic if we have a good opportunity. So what we are providing is what we call a future-proof drinking water concept. This is mainly to enable already drinking water producers, like plastic bottled water producers, to shift from let's say, an unfriendly means to eco-friendly means. And we do that by providing our platform as a whole system. So this is how it works. On the picture here, in the far behind, you see what we call a microfactory or a pod. That's a 20-foot size container production site for perfect drinking water. And we can take any kind of source water: salt water from the sea, borehole, industrial wastewater, river water, gray water, and whatsoever. We treat it in several steps to make sure we have only H2O left in that water stream, and then we adding the mineral necessary for the nutrition, to keep the nutrition and to keep the water healthy. And inside this microfactory, we are also filling what we call kegs. These are vessels where we are delivering the water to the end consumption point. These are not made in plastic. These are made in food-grade stainless steel, and being returned when they are empty and being cleaned without chemicals here with an ozone technology. So these kegs move out to the consumption point, where we have developed a smart dispenser so you can have a perfect, let's say, high integrity, where there is a mechanical handshake, a digital handshake, so you know that nobody's been tampering with the water. You also get consumption data, which you can match with health data and other kind of, let's say, digital means for measuring and improving. And you can also have this communication to the clients with a table of content and how much you have consumed and subscription model and so forth. So all this is a total circular system. So inside the microfactory itself, we are recirculating 100% of the water we use for cleaning of the system and of the kegs. And outside, obviously, we are recirculating all the vessels. And at the final consumption point, we're offering personal flask that is also obviously totally circular. So here we have a system which uses no chemicals, no plastic, low energy consumption, and basically no transport or transport in a very, very small circle. Each of these systems cater for approximately 10,000 people and can be run on solar energy, so it can be totally green. A typical system looks like a microfactory, like 500 taps. This can be very obviously depending on the application. The taps could be in household, in hospitals, in schools, in office spaces, in events, in restaurants, or whatever you consume the water. The kegs is obviously needed like 4,000 for a complete system to be filled, and 4,000 that is out in the field. And then you need a lot of flasks as well that you can also digitally connect to make sure that you have a subscription, to make sure that you have a high value in the flask, that you're keeping it and not tossing it like any other single-use stuff. And at the consumption point, we are targeting to reach a consumer cost that is lower than the single-use plastic, and because we think we need to have also financial, let's say, incentive to incentivize this kind of technology shift. The lifetime of a unit like this is 30 years. We are doing it on a lease model, so there is no capital expenditure, so there's no real investment here, and we're supported by government export credits because it's green technology and for other reasons as well. We have strong partnership with some leading industrial players. We have a strong partnership with Siemens that's doing all the IoT, IT platform automation. And we have a strong partnership with Alfa Laval that is producing our hardware, the microfactory, meaning that we have global manufacturing opportunities, obviously from leading industrial players, but really state-of-the-art technology with low maintenance and with a local opportunity for maintenance support if necessary. And just to mention, for if somebody has an interest in the event that is soon coming up, COP28 in UAE, Dubai, we will be a part of the Siemens ecosystem there to showcasing their technology through our system, because we have basically all the digital elements that they are providing for digital industries. We are a part of the MOIAT, which is the government of UAE's kind of startup scene as well. We're part of the Siemens Experience Center. We're doing things with the COP themselves, and we have our own showroom where we can also showcase our technology for anyone that is passing by and are interested in that. And just give you some example where we are active today. We are focusing a lot in the Indian Ocean area. We have one unit on the way to a partner at Madagascar called Vision Madagascar, VIMA. I'm very excited to see how that can play out. And we are planning to obviously push out the whole single-use plastic arena on that beautiful island. We're working together with the hotel resort consultants on the Maldives to see what we can do in this paradise island nation as well, to get rid of the plastic and also facilitate that we have micro factories on all the main islands to avoid transport. There is an organization in the Indian Ocean called ADWI We have an MOU together with them to facilitate 120 systems in the region to avoid plastic as well. And we have a signed MOU with the government of Seychelles, where, like many other island nations, they are concerned about obviously the climate change, but also all the trash that ends up on the beautiful beaches. Making sure that the tourists that they are so dependent on is not seeing this as a scrapyard, trash yard. So there's a lot of activities from us going on in that region, and I'll hope that we can connect to some other region as well going forward. That's all from me. My final word would be that I think that the technology exists for us to make this transition. We just need to be bold and brave and make sure that we can reach all your beautiful islands to help you out.
Thank you so much, Ulf. It was an amazing presentation. And just a reminder to the audience, please keep your questions to the Q&A box. I have seen some in the chat for you, but we will address those on the Q&A section that comes after the presentations. All right, now we have Zachary Franklin, the Managing Director of the Falkland Islands Development Corporation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning from the Falkland Islands. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate Island Innovation allowing me to talk to you guys about the Falkland Islands and what we're doing in the South Atlantic Oceans. I apologize, for some reason my presentation is at the end. Apologies for that. As Christian said, my name is Zachary Franklin. I am the Managing Director for the Falkland Islands Development Corporation, also known as FIDC. FIDC is practically the National Economic Development Agency for the whole of the Falkland Islands, and we are tasked with economic development, growth, and creating jobs for the island nation. What that practically means is we provide financial instruments in the form of grants and loans to businesses that are looking to start up, develop, or for practical business advice in the community. FIDC is the largest commercial lender in the Falkland Islands. Falkland Islands is a population of approximately 3,600 people. It's an island nation located in the South Atlantic, just off the southeast coast of South America. It's a self-governing territory, an overseas territory of the United Kingdom. Its principal export is fish, along with wool, and the third biggest industry in the islands is tourism. Almost 90% of the population speaks English. And what that translates to is the 3,600 some odd individuals practically are located in and around the city of Stanley, which, if you look at the map there, is in the northeast section of the islands. The other principal population base is in Mount Pleasant, which has a population at any given time of about 2,000 individuals. So what you're looking at is just under 6,000 people across the whole of the Falkland Islands. And once you get out of those two population bases, the rest of the islands is made up of farmland. As you can see here, I've indicated it based on farm boundaries. All of these various farms are engaged in some form of sheep shearing, as wool is one of the principal exports. The two island chains here that you can see, the main ones are known as East and West Falklands, and there is an amount of outer island chains that wrap around. So as it relates to the topic that we're discussing today, the Falkland Islands relies on a small but efficient means of connectivity and logistics in order to deliver on food and water security for the islands. How that translates to is, as it relates to global connectivity, we utilize LATAM Airlines out of Santiago, Chile, and what's known as the South America Atlantic Services vessel from Montevideo, Uruguay. Those are the principal commercial connectivity partners for delivering goods to the islands. The other ones include the Airbridge flight, as well as the Falkland Islands resupply vessel, which come from the United Kingdom. Once on the islands, We rely on the Falkland Islands Government Air Service, which is a small fleet of islander aircraft that fly around the islands, as well as local ferries and haulage to deliver on those goods and services. Where the population centers exist, you have, again, a small but efficient means of supply, principally coming from the Stanley Growers Market Gardens, which is the hydroponics and largest producer of local produce for the islands, as well as the Falkland Islands Meat Company, or what we call FIMCO, which is the sole abattoir for the whole of the Falkland Islands and delivers all of the meat to the populations. Outside of that, you have the Falkland Islands Company West Store, the Chandlery Supermarket, and the Kelper stores, which are where goods are procured for the populations. But as from the map, once you get out of those population bases of Stanley and Mount Pleasant, you've now got to rely on a network in order to deliver for a very small population spread out over hundreds of kilometers, which takes into account the local logistics that have to be implemented. You're looking at a road network of some 900 kilometers along the East and West Falklands, as well as 30 airstrips that the Falkland Islands Government Air Service relies on in order to deliver. As you can see, the photograph there is from the Stanley Growers Market Garden, which again, as the largest producer of produce, as well as with FIMCO that provides meat, the Falkland Islands is able to supply itself with an amount of locally produced goods. Nonetheless, it's that global network that we have, because the overwhelming majority of goods that are delivered are imported to the islands, in spite of the Stanley Growers Market Gardens, as well as the FIMCO and local production that exists here. On top of that, once you get out, again, of the city centers, the farm and rural business community, photograph here is of Port Howard, which is on the West Falkland Islands. These farms or settlements or units, as we like to call them, are 80 to 100% reliant on renewable power in which to operate. And they're further reliant on 100% of locally sourced water from natural springs that exist in the ground. So how does this work for the Falkland Islands, and what are we looking to do here with Virtual Island Summit? The Falkland Islands Development Corporation is keen to understand how other island nations around the world and economies are able to future-proof their respective economies and systems in order to ensure that their population sustains for the foreseeable future. As such, being the principal economic development agency for the Falkland Islands, FIDC is curious to understand what measures, both governmental as well as commercial, are currently being implemented or being looked at to implement in order to sustain that. I can imagine one of the main themes that's been discussed throughout the Virtual Island Summit is climate change, as well as rising sea levels, sea line erosion or beach erosion, as well as pollution and trash that washes up on shores. So as such, the Falkland Islands Development Corporation would like to see and to learn more about what other islands are doing to tackle these initiatives, and whether, especially on the commercial front, some of these projects and initiatives would have applicability to the Falkland Islands. And FIDC is keen to hear from the other participants, both in this panel discussion, as well as the rest of the Virtual Island Summit, to see what can be done and what can be brought to the Falkland Islands in the future. So again, I appreciate Virtual Island Summit and everybody taking the time, and that is all from FIDC today.
Thank you so much, Zachary. It was remarkable what you mentioned. And the Falkland Islands Development Corporation, I want to commend you on your 40th anniversary, and I hope that you continue to do amazing work for the islands there. Now we have on our schedule Luke Smith, agriculture professional and ICT officer at Y-Farm. Luke, the floor is all yours. Sorry, Luke, you're muted.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. As mentioned, my name is Luke Smith. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, located in the Caribbean. So if there are Caribbean persons in the chat, send some fire. I am representing an NGO called YFAM, which stands for We Help Youth Farm. What YFAM does, basically, we try to encourage and inspire young persons to really be resilient and learn about food security. So in the Caribbean, as you may already know, we are one of the most vulnerable persons or population when it comes to climate change, natural disasters, and any external shocks. Are you guys seeing my screen, my chance?
I'm looking, we're not seeing your screen yet.
Okay, sure. So I'll just continue, no worries.
We see your screen now, but we see the Zoom window. All right.
Great. Right. So as mentioned, my name is Luke Smith and I'm representing an NGO called YFAM. YFAM stands for We Help Youth Farm. And what we do, we encourage and inspire young persons in food systems and agriculture. The theme for this session, we kind of bring an innovative twist to it. We deal with the aspect of education and awareness. And we sort of put the twist of future-proofing our agri-food system starts with growing the future nourishers from the ground up. What we do, we are NGO based in Trinidad. We pioneer something called agri-edutainment, which is agricultural, educational, and entertainment. And YFAM's mission is to promote the importance of sustainable agriculture among youth and children by building their capacity in agriculture and empowering them to contribute to achieving global food and nutritional security by the year 2050. We would have realized this is a global paradigm that we will have an increase in population, aging farming population, and also a little disinterest within the agriculture sector. So that always poses the question going forward, who would be the future feeders of tomorrow? Born out of that, we've used the agri-edutainment concept, agricultural educational entertainment concept, to rebrand the culture of agriculture to agriculture. What we've done out of that is created the world's first and only food and nutrition security superheroes called Agriman, Photosynthesis, and Agribot. We use this as just one of our tools along videos, animations, and the creative arts here in Trinidad and the Caribbean to encourage young persons about the importance of food security, agri-food system, environmental awareness, and how they can play a role in achieving food and nutrition security. So within the conversation, what we aim to do is, future-proof the minds of the youth so that they can be more resilient and be solution-oriented to some of these impacts that we are facing currently. Some of our other activities are geared towards visiting schools, partnering with other NGOs, government and private sector to undertake projects such as community gardens, training and capacity building. So far, our impact has been, we have a farm in Trinidad, we have over 18,000 visitors. The comic books, we have 5 comic books in English, and actually we did a partner with a Brazilian company to have our comic books in South America. We've done software TEDx talks, we've presented at the UNESCO World Summit and forums, and we usually do school tours. So let me just run through. So this year is just the comic books that we do. We use this as a sensitization tool. So we really focus on inspiring young persons of the role they could play. And after we've encouraged them in zero waste, in saving soil, in learning digital agriculture, how we could improve our food systems, we then seek to go on into the agripreneurship means of things that we empower them with this capacity building that they could now think solution oriented. And that is really important in building resiliency within our Caribbean context. So just to close off, YFAM continues to pave the way for sustainable and a food future by introducing young people to the agriculture industry through their innovation, interactive programs, advocacy efforts, and partnerships. And if Agriman was here, he would say plant one tree, eat for free. This will guarantee food security. So that's it for my presentation. I hope it was different and it was insightful.
Thank you so much, Luke. It was an amazing presentation, and looking forward to seeing more of those adventures. And we also appreciate you joining us because it is very early in the Caribbean. So thank you so much for that. All right. So next up in our lineup, we have Karen Mapusua, Director of Land Resources Division and President of iFoam Organics International in the Pacific Community. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Talofalava, everybody, and Bulavanaka, since I'm speaking to you from Fiji. It's great to be here tonight. Tonight for me. Be Aware is a regional body owned and governed by the countries and territories of the Pacific Islands, and we provide scientific and technical support for our members and with our members to help them achieve their development aspirations. We work really closely on that important nexus that everybody's talking around: climate, land, agriculture, culture, rights, governance, to help us move forward in these really, really challenging times. Just in reference to the title of this, and I want to say that I don't actually think food scarcity is a problem globally. We produce enough food to feed the world. The problem is distribution, and the problem is waste in that food system. Good nutrition is another issue, but just producing more food won't solve that issue. In fact, it could make things worse. The way we produce food is extremely damaging to the environment and our health. So we get into this vicious cycle of food production damaging the environment, and the worse the environment becomes, the poorer quality our food is, and we just try and produce more food to compensate for it. And if I can give you a concrete example of that, in our effort to grow more, 60% of the world's dietary energy now comes from rice, corn, and wheat. We've lost biodiversity, and the system uses extensive chemical inputs and loads of water. But a Harvard study suggests that when we hit the CO2 levels of 2050 that are projected, those three crops will lose essential elements. They'll drop 10% of their zinc, 5% of their iron, and up to 8% of their protein. So we might produce more, but we'll still have malnourished people. And I think that's really important for islands as well. And one of the key strategies of the Pacific community in this space is to work with nature. We can't ignore it. We're part of it. We can't outsmart it. So we're focusing on conserving and utilising our agrobiodiversity and promoting agroecological production. Starting with the science, with our regional gene bank, the Centre for Pacific Crops and Trees, we've got over 2,000 varieties of staple food crops, most of them from the Pacific. And that having that collection conserved allows us to repatriate varieties to countries when they get lost, either through disease or natural disasters. It allows us to share clean, safe planting materials, and it allows for research and breeding. And for example, we're now working to identify varieties of taro that are drought resistant, which is going to be very important in climate change scenarios and very important when we head into weather events like the El Nino that's coming our way this year. We're working on the production systems as well, because I think that's a key. We're part of a system, and so we need to work with the whole system, not just with single interventions. So we're working with a network of organic learning farms across the region. They'll become centres for farmers to learn agroecological practices. They'll become centres for sharing planting materials and increasing diversity. And the aim is to increase the biodiversity on farms and increase the amount of land in these 6 countries that is managed under sustainable agroecological practices, which is the key to better nutrition for humans, but also will improve soil health and the resilience of the farming systems to pests and diseases. Not everything is small scale. Even in the Pacific Islands, we have larger scale food producers. And we're working on an initiative with some of those really innovative, large-scale commercial producers to transition the important commercial crops, which are grown in the ways that are most damage to the environment and least resilient, to climate resilient and regenerative systems. A system that actually sequesters carbon, is financially viable for the farmer, and produces sufficient quantities of healthy food. So this is a GCF funded project. So we're all praying it gets through the last board, because it's an important opportunity to work at scale. And we need to take transformative action now. We can't keep playing on the edges of these critical issues. And an example of how we're taking on a systems approach is working with territorial or whole island transformation. It's something we want to do more of. But we have a live example in the island of Emai in Vanuatu. They were suffering from overfishing of sea cucumbers, which impacted on the ecosystem, leading to algal blooms and poisonous fish. So it impacted on their fishing industry, the health of the population. They established marine protected areas to try and rectify that situation. But the island chiefs recognised that they needed to do more than just put in place the marine protected areas. They need to look at all the different things that would threaten the MPAs and cause other damage to the marine ecosystem. They recognised agriculture was a huge risk. So they took efforts to also manage the land in the same way that they were managing the sea. This was all happening around the time that Vanuatu was hit by Cyclone Pam in 2015. It destroyed 100% of agricultural crops on the island. So the Pacific community worked with the chiefs on the island. We took an integrated approach, and we looked at the community's genetic resources, their forestry, their land use planning, the pests and diseases that were happening on the island. We listened to the nuance of the culture and to the culturally important crops and trees in order to design the interventions. So all the 10 villages on the island went through a land use planning process. We were able to introduce new agrobiodiversity and restore some of the things that had been lost. There were solar power coolers to curb post-harvest losses. The island was declared organic, working with the local organic standards so that they could add value to their products. And then now, over the first 4 years after that intervention, they increased their yam production by 4 times, which took pressure off coastal fisheries and an income source. And now they're working to establish a healthy and sustainable sea cucumber fishery and hatchery using responsible mariculture that's science-based, comprehensive business planning, the right infrastructure and technology, marketing, branding, sales, the whole works. So that's what I mean by a whole system approach. You can't just do one intervention and expect transformative change, because everything's linked together. And particularly in our small islands, we need to look at context and work, importantly, with the governance structures that are there. So if I had 3 things, actually I'll make it 4 things that I think we really need to do to build resilience in these systems going forward. First one, get off fossil fuels. Our food system is hooked on fossil fuels. And for islands, it's not only how we produce our food when we're importing fertilizers, but also the fact that our shipping industry is a huge carbon emitter, and that needs to shift. We need diversity in our diets. That starts on our farms. And we need to lean into culture and tradition and the rich biodiversity that we have on our islands and re-indigenize our diets. Thirdly, work with the systems, move away from the reductionist approaches that address just one thing. There's no magic ingredient or action or technology that's going to solve these really huge challenges. We need to work with the whole system. And the 4th one, I'd say, talk to Luke about working with youth. That is so critical, that we bring along that next generation of food producers who will take after not only our nutrition, but be stewards of the land that they're working with. Thank you.
No, thank you, Karen. It was an amazing presentation. And one of the things that you mentioned is I know a lot of people that love sea cucumbers. So that's something always nice to hear. So I would invite all of the panelists to please turn on your video and audio. We will start the Q&A, right? And to our esteemed audience, please continue adding questions on the Q&A box so we can address them in this section. Now, I actually have a couple of questions here that are general, so any of you can take them, or if all of you can take it and have different responses, that's perfectly fine as well. So my first question would be, in the world that we're currently living, we see that some cities are rapidly urbanizing, right? What would be the challenges and opportunities for urban agriculture to contribute to food security, especially in densely populated urban areas? We have seen it happen in some cities, that it's the trend now. You grow tomato plants on your backyard or on the corner of your house if you don't have a garden. And people are doing that. Like, for example, I usually have plants around my house. And now that I recently relocated, I have a basil plant here because, you know, an Italian without basil is no Italian. So this is something like, for a general perspective, like people who have a lot of space in their houses and they have a garden and they have the opportunity to do this small urban agriculture. And there are some initiatives also that take land that is not being used. Like, for example, it's owned by the city, so you can grow certain plants there. Do you think there are challenges and opportunities that we can mention for urban agriculture to any of you?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a start at that one. Yeah, look, I think as a general rule, everyone should grow something apart from anything else that reminds you that you're connected into the earth. I think that's really, really important. There are huge opportunities for urban agriculture. I think that the community garden movement around the world has really grown. And in some places, there are the opportunities to do that. That takes the support of the local authority, whether that's a town council, whatever the local governance is, to provide the land and some support. But I think there's such a strong recognition of the health challenges that we need and the need for all of us in islands to improve our diet and increase the diversity in our diet. I can't imagine that there would be objections to that in most local governments. But there's also a lot of opportunities to grow simple things around the house, container gardening, gardening in sacks. There is, you know, and it doesn't have to just be herbs, although herbs and basil are really important. You can grow root crops in sacks. So there's a stack of interventions there that could be utilized for someone on their balcony or in their small backyard to grow some food. I think the challenges sometimes is around the inputs. You need to be able to get good soil and good compost for that. You don't want to be using toxic chemicals around your house. So there needs to be education and information around how to grow a little bit of food. But there's definitely lots of opportunities. Nice technology out of Australia are known as food cubes, which is just over a metre square. They're wicking systems, so they really save water, and they're being utilised in a lot of the atolls where the soil is very poor. So it's, you know, equivalent of not having a farm when you don't have soil you can use. So yeah, really would encourage more work being done in that area.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Do any of the other panelists want to add something to Karen's intervention about urban agriculture?
Yes, hi. So thank you, Karen, for sharing. That is completely online what we do back in Trinidad here. You know, we like to say no space, no problem. There are so many ways to grow food within your households, within a little space. what we try to encourage to is the community garden concept. We've done a few community gardens and we see how this bring people together, but people really understand where their food comes from. We have a saying, but plant your plate. So if you could at least plant 1% or 2% of something that's in your plate, you know what you put into it and you know what you're going to consume. So that's a movement we try to encourage in our comic books and our animations and stuff for even young persons or the population at large to understand that if you don't have space, that's no problem. There's 99 ways plus that you can grow your own food, and you really develop a passion and that connection to where your food comes from and why must I grow my own food. That is what we like to encourage, the why. Why should I grow my own food amongst children? And the community garden concept, we like to take it a little further, you know, growing your own food, but what value addition could you come up with? What product can you come up with in these community gardens to empower livelihoods and really contribute to food security in some small way within your community? So all for the community garden, there are its challenges, but with everything, there's opportunity towards it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Luke. All right. We have a question here from the audience. Mail Poison, I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly, says hello from French Polynesia. Hello and welcome. I love our Pacific audience here. How can we reduce our dependencies on imported products? Is the alimentary autonomous the only way possible? How do we get around to it? Ulf?
I mean, I can talk about where we are active, obviously the drinking water sector, and there is no whatsoever need for importing drinking water through bottles, because you're living on an island nation, and so far as I know, you're surrounded by water. It's just to manage that infrastructure in a good way, not only for the treatment, but also from the distribution, but also from the dispensing. And in our case, giving it as an example of how you can, let's say, cut the ties with the need of imported goods, rather than importing stuff, bring your technology, bring the technology to the islands, produce where you consume, create green jobs, bring the taxation where it belongs, and use the resources that is around you. And obviously that's not maybe possible with everything, but with a lot of things, and especially in the drinking water sector, which is a product or a need that you have every day for everyone.
Thank you so much, Ulf. Does anyone else want to add something to Ulf's intervention? Zachary?
Well, of course, the obvious way is, you know, as it relates to food security and reducing reliance on imports, is simply that import substitution. It's obviously being able to manage and produce and not have to rely on that, which is a sort of an X factor that, you know, you have to then account for if you're importing, which has all sorts of knock-on effects in terms of pricing of goods. Qualitatively, we're of the opinion that the technology is getting to a point, and this buttresses, you know, the previous question that you led in with, which is that you're, especially as it relates to, you know, urban farming, is that you are able now to produce more, you know, grow more food with less space. You don't need the traditional way of farming out in the open on vast acres of land. With hydroponics and vertical farming, you're able to grow in towers and indoor systems. So you'd be able to produce, especially on island, you know, different island nations around the world that have different tropical or, you know, environmental differences as opposed to sort of the main continents. Being able to grow outside, you know, crops traditionally may not be an option. Keeping in mind too, as an island economy that is reliant on tourism to a certain extent, one of the benefits to being able to produce more locally is that tourists increasingly look towards enjoying locally produced goods and meat when they're having their meals, when they're visiting. It's a touch point. It's something that they get to go home to and talk about while they're doing there. So the ability to address that is, from a commercial, not just food security, but a commercial standpoint is equally as important.
Thank you so much, Zachary. And I think it's very important. One of the things that I have seen here on the city that I am currently located is that they are really encouraging local produce. And this is something that should happen on a global scale, right? Why do we have to depend on imported goods? We can produce them locally. It helps our farmers. It helps our environment. We reduce the carbon footprint because we don't have to import anything that we can produce. So I believe that these type of initiatives are the way to go. So thank you for your contribution. And I have another question for the esteemed panel. What economic policies and incentives would be the most effective to encourage our farmers to adopt more sustainable and resilient agricultural practices? Karen?
I think one of the really key things at the moment, a lot of agriculture is subsidized. And what is subsidized is fossil fuels. What we need to be doing is rewarding farmers for their contributions to ecosystem services. And, the obvious one is carbon credits. Sequestering carbon in soil or in forests is one way farmers can be rewarded. But that is too narrow. And it's one of those, it's not the thing that's going to fix everything. We need to look at rewarding ecosystem service delivery for farmers. And if we're going to subsidize anything in agriculture, it should be supporting farmers to transition to more sustainable practices rather than subsidize them to continue using unsustainable practices. I think that single biggest policy change would change the world.
Thank you so much, Karen. Does anyone else want to add to Karen's point?
I totally agree with what and resonate with what Karen said. I think that there are obviously two lines. You have to incentivize on one direction, which could be water credits or carbon credits or any kind of financial support. But on the other hand, you should stop subsidizing what is bad. Today there is no carbon tax on moving goods. There's no carbon tax on the use of plastic and so forth. So I think we need to work on both ends, and I'm pretty sure that will be a very powerful tool for setting things right.
Thank you so much, Ulf. Does anyone else want to add something? Zach?
Well, look, as a development corporation that sits in between government and the commercial sector, just from our experience, what we launched this past year, our financial year starts July 1 is the Green Business Program. And that is a full suite of loans and grants that are tailored towards the commercial sector that are purpose for initiatives and projects or aspects of their business that directly speak to renewables, energy saving, or any initiative that is towards speaking toward more sustainable or getting people on better practices. So in terms of what the previous panelists just said, there is a means of incentivizing farmers or anybody in the commercial sector is designing your financial products, making them more accessible if businesses in the commercial sector is able to access that financing, and further incentivizing it by making those what we offer a loan that is lower rate than our traditional loans, either secured or unsecured, by coming to the development corporation for a loan that is for a green initiative or a renewable initiative or an aspect of your business that's more environmentally friendly. You actually save on the interest that you're paying back to the development corporation. But those are deliberate actions that have to be taken, wherever you are. And as a development corporation that sits in between public and private, we're able to fill that gap and sort of encourage businesses here to take that up.
Thank you so much, Zachary. I think it's very important, and I commend you on your organization for the work that you are doing. hopefully we will have more initiatives like yours, right? And I have another question for the panel. How can we encourage global collaboration? Like, for example, we have this example on the Falkland Islands. We have examples in different parts of the world. How can we encourage our world leaders to take action and see what is going on in different countries and take that knowledge and run with it in their countries and provide initiatives like these ones? Any takers?
I guess obviously it's a difficult one, but I think like for any other way of making people aware of the importance and the success of whatever, we need to have good examples. And I think that there is also a need for good examples for the politician to understand on their incentive side that they are actually earning something for it. They can, by having this collaborative arrangement, have the need for use less tax money or getting more tax money available or solving environmental problems or whatever. So I think we need to play on their incentive side, and we need to bring forward good examples.
If I can just add to that, I think there's champions out there for learning and sharing what's going on. And a live example at the moment in French Polynesia next week, there's going to be a conference on sustainable food systems. And there's a lot of really innovative things happening in French Polynesia around import replacement and using local bananas to make pasta, all sorts of things. But the government of French Polynesia has specifically invited several other Pacific governments at ministerial level to come and do a tour and experience and learn what's happening in French Polynesia and then take that learning home. And I think there are governments around the world that see that value and will be happy to work with their peers to start that learning exchange.
Thank you so much, Ulf and Karen, for your interventions. Does anyone else want to add something else to the point in hand? All right.
Yeah, you know, what we try to do working with young person, working with youth who would be the future innovators and leaders, you know, we try to foster that mindset of collaboration, not competition, complementing, not reinventing. You know, so try to really foster that unity and the amazing solutions that are occurring all across the world, that we could really, you know, complement this, that we're not competing against other countries and other innovations and solutions. So we try to foster that with young children to develop that from a young age. So, you know, we have a more resilient future and better thinkers going forward. It is hard work, but it has to be done.
Thank you so much, Luke. And I have a final question for the panel. We know that equitable access to clean water is an integral component of sustainable food systems, right? What would be the key strategies? And I know that Ulf is going to take this one, but I'm sure the rest is going to also want to participate. What are the key strategies to address water scarcity?
I think we are a part of that answer with the technology we have. There might be other ways of doing, but in principle, I think that you have to produce where you consume. And obviously you have to do it in an eco-friendly manner. So you should use renewable energy to provide the water that you actually need. You should try to use unconventional water resources so that you're not depleting your water table, because that's on all island nations that we are visiting and discussing with. That's a major problem going forward, that it's getting more and more brackish water underneath the earth and the soil, and soon you can't use it for even for irrigation. So, and I also think it needs to be, especially in an island nation, and here is where I think the island nation could be a good example. It has to be distributed infrastructure that we are looking for the future of our, let's say, communities and countries. And I think, again, that's where the island nations play a vital role in an example, because you're already in some of your, let's say, island nations, you are a scattered society with islands all over the place. And I think that's where we can learn from how to do this in a resilient way, produce where you consume, make it as local as possible, connect it obviously to in good ways of doing that by not producing any trash or whatsoever, and create green jobs through that.
Thank you so much, Ulf. Does anyone else want to add to Ulf's point? All good? All right.
I'll just say protect what we've got. Scarcity is a problem, but we've got to protect what we've got. And the worst culprits are often farmers and foresters, and we've got to clean up our acts to protect the water that we've got. I also think there needs to be more awareness around this. The Pacific Islands has the lowest rate of improved water supply in the world. That's not a commonly known fact, and we are improving at the slowest rate in the world. And yet it's not something that is discussed every day here, and it needs to be.
Completely agree. Thank you for that. All right. And we have come to an end to this amazing session. I wish that we had more time, but thank you so much, Ulf, Karen, Zachary, and Luke, for your amazing contributions to our audience that are constantly asking about it in the chat. We will have the recording available in our website like we do with other sessions. And if you're registered, you will also receive it via email. And I would like to thank our amazing panelists for this discussion today. And hopefully we will have opportunities in the future to go in depth on this topic. Food security is something that is very dear to us. So we always try at the Virtual Island Summit to have at least one session that is dedicated to this topic, because it is something that we all need. We cannot live without food and water, all right? So it is important that we make a change in the patterns that we have seen of how food is grown or how it arrives to your tables. So it is important that these initiatives that you are all doing get more impact or have more impact in other places in the world that are seeing what you're doing. They take the good and they run with it. That's the purpose of this. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our amazing audience. And I have some news for you. If you miss our opening session, you might have missed our announcement that we are partnering with the government of Prince Edward Island to host the first ever Global Sustainable Islands Summit. It's going to be held in Prince Edward Island in Canada in May 2024. It's a 2-day in-person summit, and we will be discussing solutions and advancements in sustainable energy. You can follow the link that you will find in the chat for more information. And we have a discount code BIS 2023 to get a super early bird discount valid until September the 30th. So please go ahead and take a look at the chat for more information. I would also like to invite you to our next session, which is going to start at noon. It's going to start, at 8 a.m. New York time, 1 p.m. London, and 10 p.m. Sydney time. How can we transform power generations on tropical islands? Do not miss that session, and stay with us because we have plenty more. We are on day 3, so you will see more of us and more sessions. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to our esteemed panelists again, and we will see you on another session. Thank you so much.